Hi, we're starting a new topic today called the Cadential 6-4. You can find this in Unit 11 of your textbook, and as you can tell from the name, it has to do with cadences. What it does is embellish or intensify a 5-to-1 cadence. So let's look at the progression found here on the first system of piano music. Short progression that goes tonic, dominant preparation, dominant to tonic. And we're most interested in how 5 goes to 1, the dominant to tonic cadential motion. And what we're going to see is there's a way to embellish and intensify that. Let's look at this progression just in the outer voices right now. We'll see that we have a melody line going do, do, ti, do. Let's take a quick listen. Okay, so the move from do down to ti is very important because this brings the leading tone in to the dominant chord, and that's the tone that has a lot of impetus to resolve back up to tonic. Now what's going to happen when we embellish the dominant chord, let's look at line 2 here, is we're going to delay the move from the C down to the B, and in so doing create a dissonance. That's why this note is red. This C creates a dissonant interval above the G and the bass. So the 5 chord doesn't arrive immediately as a triad. It's a little bit delayed while the melody hangs on this C. Then the C resolves to the leading tone, completing the 5 triad, and that resolves normally to 1. Let's listen to this progression with the delayed leading tone. So this is an embellishment of the 5 chord, and it works because we have a dissonant interval, this unstable perfect fourth, the C over the G, that resolves to a more stable major third and introduces the leading tone. So this is the basic idea of how the 5 chord is embellished: dissonance, resolution to consonance, and on the third line of music, now we see it written out in a full 4 voices. Same melody line, same dissonant note, but now we have SATB full harmonization below. So we're going to hear the full 1 chord, the full 4 chord, which is dominant preparation, and then when the 5 chord is supposed to sound, we're going to have this embellishing harmony that's not exactly the 5 chord itself. It's a dissonant note over the 5 and a different chord. Then we get the real 5 chord on the 4th beat. So this is a very common idiom, something that you've heard over and over, but now we're going to know how to name it. So let's look into what this dissonant, unstable sound is. If we look at what this dissonant chord is, it doesn't look like a 5 chord happening right on the 3rd beat. We have a G in the bass, but instead of the B and the D that we expect for the 5 triad, we have the dissonant 4th, and then we have an E, which is a 6th above the bass. So these happen to be the notes of the tonic triad, not the 5 triad, C, E, and G, if we spell them that way. And so for that reason, some textbooks will call this a 1-6-4 chord, which is what it looks like. But we're not going just by what it looks like, we're going by the function of this chord. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to think of both of these chords as an embellishment of the 5 harmony. So we're going to have a chord in 6-4 position, moving to a chord in 5-3 position, the G, B, D dominant chord, but it's all considered part of dominant harmony. Let's go down to staff number 4 and we'll see the analysis, and actually I have a little reference to one of the other ways of analyzing this. So I do have a 1-6-4 here in parentheses, and it's possible in high school you worked with this kind of progression and called this a 164 chord because it does look like C, E, G, a 164 chord. But since the function of it is all within a two-chord dominant, we don't call this 164 in our textbook. We call it a 5-chord with a 6/4 to 5/3 resolution of essentially a suspension. So there's a dissonant formation, the 6 and 4 moving to the consonant 5 and 3. But all this together is functioning as dominant. So let's listen to this again. Tonic, dominant prep, then dominant with an embellishment, and then on to tonic. So that's the basic concept of what the cadential 6/4 is. We'll see in staff 5 that the dissonant note doesn't always have to be in the soprano. It can be in any of the 3 voices above the bass. Here it is showing up in the tenor, and the soprano alto are doing other things. So let's follow the line with the dissonant note here. We have the tonic, then the tonic note appearing a 4th above the bass, creating a dissonance, and then resolving down to the leading tone to create the real functional dominant harmony, and then resolution on to tonic. For our last example, number 6, you'll see we have a different progression. We're going 1, 2, 6 to the 5, 6, 4 to 5, 3 to 1. And this different chord of preparation causes some voice leading differences as we approach 5. You'll also notice this tall stack of numbers here by the 5 chord. The 6, 4 to 5, 3 is still the same, and the only thing that's been added is we're using a 5, 7 chord on the 4th beat, and we approach the 5, 7 chord with an octave note above the bass, moving to a 7th above the bass, and that 7th supplies the dominant 7th. And you'll see this notation fairly frequently. It always looks like a big mess, but it's actually quite simple. Here's the voice that has it. This is the 8 in the alto here, the G, octave above the G bass. That's the 8, and it moves to a 7 above the G bass. The bass drops an octave, but we still count the F as a 7th above the G. So that's what that is, and we can hear this one. Great. All right. Let's go on to things we want to consider when writing the cadential 6/4. This will help you with your homework. So first of all, you're going to always start with the bass line and chord symbols. In an exercise, this is how it will be given to you. Our bass line, 1, 4, 5, 1. Do, fa, sol, sol, do, like that. So the first thing you do is choose which voice is going to create the perfect 4th and have the red note in it. And write in that note. You can put it in the tenor, alto, soprano. Here we've put it in the soprano. Now, some considerations about these red notes. Let me shrink this a little bit so we can see more of the list here. So, never double the dissonance, red note. In general, we never double dissonances. Prepare the dissonant note by common tone or by step. Do not leap to a dissonance. So when we start writing our soprano voice, we want to prepare, that is, have the note before the dissonant note, approach it in as smooth a way as possible. So the smoothest way, of course, would be common tone, which we have here. There's a C, which fits equally well into the 4 chord. So the C is the preparation of the dissonant note. We don't ever leap to a dissonance. In some cases, you'll have to move by step to the red note in the lower progression here. We have the red note, the dissonant note in the alto, and it's prepared by step from a D coming to the C. That's the best possible approach we can get when we have a 2/6 chord for our dominant preparation. So just remember to approach the dissonant note as smoothly as you possibly can. Common tone is best. At this point, notice that the red note is tonic. If we haven't talked about that much before, I'll mention it now. So if you're wondering what your dissonant note should be, just always use the tonic note. That creates a fourth above the bass note. So you resolve your dissonant note down by step to create the leading tone. And this happens as the 5/6/4 moves to 5/3. Then resolve your leading tone normally, and that line is practically finished. Here the leading tone is in the soprano, so it has to come back up to tonic. In this line, this is all happening in the alto, so with the leading tone in an inner voice, it can be frustrated and move down to sol. Okay, so that line is done, and you can just write the other voices around it using your normal voice leading procedures. Other doubling things, do double the bass in the 5/6/4 and the 5/5/3 chord. We'll look up here and see how that's done. Here they're in unison, bass and tenor. And here the unison splits apart to an octave as the bass drops an octave from 5/6/4 to 5/3. As the dissonance resolves, the remaining upper voice will usually move in parallel with the voice that has the dissonance. Okay, so now let's look at that exact thing happening. I can isolate this for you, and we'll play the soprano and the alto moving in parallel as our cadential chord resolves. Yeah, you'll often have that happen. That kind of parallel motion. Here it is again in the other example. It's just inverted. Because, of course, the dissonant note is in the alto. A few more things we have to keep in mind. Good soprano lines over the cadential 6/4 are 1-7-1 or 3-2-1. Those work very well when you're writing these. This upper example has 1-7-1, or do-ti-do. The lower one has a soprano of mi, re, do, or 3-2-1 in soprano. Let me play this one for you in all its voices. Okay. A couple more things to notice before we're done. The bass may drop an octave as the cadential 6/4 resolves. We saw that happen in what we just played. And very important, the dissonant cadential 6/4 falls on a strong beat and its resolution on a weaker beat. That's typical of dissonance treatment in all tonal music. We have suspensions or other dissonant tones preferred to fall on a strong beat, so there's a relaxation and a move to a weaker beat as the dissonance resolves. The next thing we'll do is actually I'll work some problems with you in the next video.